pretty much the only choice to start doing everything ourselves. We came from a small college town in New Jersey, not really the hub of the music industry or anything, you know, but the city kind of has a long scene of DIY bands releasing their own records, booking their own tours, all that thing, and so we just kind of followed in those footsteps. There's nobody who wanted to release our records at first. There's nobody who's going to book our tours or manage us or anything. And in the end, it ended up being a huge blessing because we learned how to do all these things. So once those people started to come around, I was able to tell who were the real deal and who were kind of just talking out their ass. I mean, we've played over 100 shows a year for like 4 or 5 years now, and last year was up more like 160, 170 shows, and it was a rough year. It was a lot of stuff, and you go through that many shows, what starts to happen, it's not just the like daily grind of playing shows and like being away from home, but you just start running into problems with just like bands breaking down and like people getting sick on tour and all that kind of stuff that just happens throughout the year.
Your first tour that you did you kind of pace yourself to start with, or you got kind of like a few days in and you think, oh my god, this is hard? Do you remember that?
I don't know, the first tour we did was just kind of exciting. It was the first time I'd ever met that many people in my life. It was the first time I'd ever been outside of New Jersey with people who weren't my parents, you know. It was really, really exciting. I don't think there was any pacing to be done. I was just trying to
The first real tour we did was like only about 2 weeks long, and the dates, we filled every date, which was kind of rare for a band booking their first tour like that, and except that they were like, some of them were like 13 or 14 hours apart, you know. Mm-hmm. So we were driving, it was like not in any sort of order. It was just like go here, go there, back over there, then back down there, and then back to that first spot you started at. So
I think we drove through Milwaukee like 3 or 4 times on that.
And so there was definitely no pacing going on in that first tour. I think we've gotten better at pacing ourselves as we've gone along, and we need to, because I couldn't live that first tour over again too many times.
The sound, it sort of, for me, it really sits kind of squarely into sort of this rich tradition of really great garage rock and roll that comes out of the States. I mean, where do you think this tradition comes from?
I mean, for all that's wrong with America, which is very obvious to the whole world, especially Europeans, and I mean to us as well, we live there, we have to deal with it all the time. There's too many things to list, but mainly the attitude of the U.S. thinking that it's like better than everywhere in the world and it deserves to dominate the rest of the world. But what the U.S. is amazing for is its culture, and that's like over the last 100 years, the U.S. culture of like producing rock and roll and jazz and hip hop and like all of those things came from the U.S. punk, you know? That's like, you can't even like contend with that anywhere else in the world. So, I mean, I think there's obviously something in the U.S. culture, and I think it's like what I was talking about before with art being better when you have more diverse influences, and I think the U.S. is so diverse and its perspective and where people have come from that just combines to create interesting art, you know? Something like rock and roll is like a combination of like jazz and soul and country, and it's like there's probably nowhere else in the world that you would get this country music that's coming out of like almost like a Irish European tradition, and then like jazz and soul, which is coming from like a African slave tradition, and you combine them and you end up with rock and roll. Like, so I guess it's in some way we're just like a part of that tradition.